Today, we have the pleasure of interviewing Dominique Campbell, aka Nique Love Rhodes, a hip-hop performer, recording artist, a social entrepreneur, and most importantly, a mom. Nique comes by way of Detroit, and she has made it her mission to develop Detroit's music economy. We had the opportunity to get to know a little about Nique and Cipher. Let's dive in.
Well, I'm so happy you all picked the Cipher as your case study. That's very cool to hear.
Yeah. So I guess I can start off with a few questions. Number one, what does the name Nique Love Rhodes, like what is it inspired from?
Yeah, so that name, so Nique Love Rhodes is actually, I don't have a cool like rapper stage name backstory. So my real name is Dominique, and so people always just all my life called me Nique for short. And then my maiden name was Rhodes. And so that's just always, you know, when I got married, one of the things my dad was like, "Are you gonna keep Rhodes? Like you gotta." Yeah, I'm the only child, so it's like you gotta keep the Rhodes legacy going somehow. So I kept Rhodes in my stage name, and then my husband, who was at my boyfriend at the time when I was like kind of early on in my career, he was like, love, he was like, love is you know, all your music is positive and it talks about, you know, like loving other people, loving yourself, things like that. You should put love in your name. And I was like, okay, Nique Rhodes, Nique Love Rhodes. Yeah, that's got a ring to it. Cool. It sounds dope. We'll stick with it. and that's really the backstory of it.
So who would you say are your top 3 favorite artists from Detroit?
I'm just gonna list all my friends because they are all dope musicians. So you have like Sophia E, who's like a soul fusion artist, kind of like experimental soul. Then I have a group called Lou Fuki and Divine Providence, that's like like Afro jazz. And then a hip hop artist by the name of Dango Fourlane. So those right now are like my favorite artists.
And next question, any rising independent artists from Detroit that we should look out for? Obviously, I think you mentioned their names, but if anyone else comes up on the top of your head.
It's so many. Like you have another young lady, her name is Anna, but her artist name is Na N-A Bonsai. I can't remember like the meaning behind it, but she's another soul artist. You have an artist by the name of Nappy Devi, who's another hip hop artist. You have gosh, it's so many. Verzel is a rock soul artist. You have Kai Pai, Cyepie, who's like a fusion of hip hop, R&B, soul. There's so many artists. Like there's literally hundreds of artists that I could rattle off.
When did you realize this might be something you want to do? Is there like any moment, or have you always been like musical?
Yeah, so actually both. So I've always I would say been into music even as a kid. So my earliest childhood memories of music, my dad had a great vinyl collection, and like Michael Jackson songs and videos would be like always in rotation at the house. This was the early 90s, and so music videos were still like almost like an event, like music videos and award shows. So you know, everything would be on primetime TV. So like when Michael Jackson came out with a video, it would be on like ABC at 8 o'clock, all programming stopped, and they're gonna show this Michael Jackson video. And so I was like having that coming up as a kid, it was like really, really cool. And like my parents they were into it, so I was into it. My dad wrote songs and like play. He tinkered around with guitar, and so I was just a kid that was super obsessed with Michael Jackson. I was into who else was I into as a kid? I went through a huge Backstreet Boy phase, and the like coming early I would say early 2000s, like when I was in high school. That's when I really got into like my hip hop bag, and so it was like Jay-Z, DMX. I was still catching up to like Biggie and Tupac through my older cousins, even though they had passed away at the time. But I was like that's when I really got to hip hop. And so yeah, early on as a kid, I was just always around music, whether it was music that I wasn't supposed to be listening to through my older cousins, or music that my parents was playing. And so my dad, in our first childhood home, he actually put up like mirrors on the wall or whatever, because I'm the only child, so I was super creative and always just doing weird stuff. And so I would like sing and dance to myself, and I would like line up all my stuffed animals and stuff like that and do that. So I was always into music. And then around, I would say 15, 16 is when I really started getting serious. Like I started finding like different open mics and things like that. And I was doing poetry at the time. And I started doing poetry. I would do my poems at different open mics. A friend of mine who I'm still friends with now, his name is Mike, he was like, yo, you sound like you're rapping, you should try to rap. This was when Napster was popping, and so people would illegally download music. So he would download instrumentals and beats, and I would write my poems and turn them into rap. So I started like studying how to make a rap song. And so I would listen to rap songs on the radio and figure out like the structure, and I would just structure my poems around that. And yeah, from there I did my first like legit show. I was probably 17 going on 18. And then I just got the bug, and I was like, oh, this is people actually pay attention to me doing this stuff. Cool, I'm gonna keep doing it. And then when I got paid for the first time, I was like, what, I can really get paid off of like rapping some songs that I wrote and people like it. And I was like, I just want to do more of this. And that turned into like fueling my passion to like learn more about the business and how to get better and all of that stuff.
Did you encounter a problem or like see one that motivated you to like start Decipher?
Yeah, so Decipher came later on. I would say like later on in my career. So at this point, I was already like, I had a band. I had like put out music myself and kind of like had a knowledge of the business. And so me and my friends, we would like go and tour other cities. So we would play like a South by Southwest in Texas. So we would go do a show in New York. And whenever we would go to another city, we always saw that their infrastructure was better there than it was here in Detroit. Even though you can literally throw a penny here in Detroit and you'll probably land on somebody that's musical in some way. And so we was like, man, why is it that whenever we go to another city, we want to stay there? It's like, Austin is so much better than Detroit. We don't want to go back home. And New York is so much better. And it was really because their infrastructure and the resources. So a lot of artists in those cities, they're able to have a lot more paid performance opportunities. They have a lot more resources, whether that's, legit record labels or managers or publishers and things like that. Who, they live in those cities, so the access to opportunities is greater. And so instead of complaining about it or leaving, we decided, it was myself, a friend of mine named Wayne, who's a drummer, producer, and then another friend of mine, Alondra, who is also a rapper and songwriter. And the three of us, we was like, let's just start organizing ourselves around this need. So that's how Decipher was birthed. We started meeting with some of our other friends in music, just seeing about, what do you need as an artist to stay here, thrive here? What resources are lacking? What resources are working well? And we literally built our program, our organization around that. That was in like mid 2017 when we started. And then we got our first grant in 2018 from the Knight Foundation, and that kind of launched our our programming.
Is there anything in particular that you really admire about the music scene right now in Detroit, and anything that you're actively working to change or make easier?
That's a good question. Something that I admire about the music scene is just the level of creativity and the level of diversity within the music scene. There's so many cool artists doing amazing work. And so what we're trying to make better is providing platforms for all of those artists to be able to, have the resources they need to keep doing that work. To keep, whether it's having a co-working space for musicians. That's something kind of one of our big projects that we're trying to get off the ground now. Is having a hub where musicians can have 24/7 safe access to a rehearsal space, recording space, build a better infrastructure. Our programming right now, we're doing a lot of like professional development. So we'll do artist talks from kind of more seasoned artists, and do things like that just to help provide platform to artists to grow in their career. Yes. Okay. But I'm gonna turn my camera off, but I'm still here.
Okay, cool.
All right, all good. You're all good. Can you describe the community that Cipher serves?
Yeah, so our community is actually twofold. So the first community is definitely musicians of all genres, all levels of, where they're at in their professional careers or development. So that's our primary audience is musicians. And then our secondary audience, I would say, is general community. So all of our programming is free, open to the public. And so we really try to connect not only musicians to resources and opportunities, but we try to connect communities to live music in very intentional ways. So the bulk of our programming, for instance, in the summer is all about activating public spaces with live music. And we're really intentional about like how we curate those lineups of artists and things like that. So that's our secondary market. And then our third, I would say, target audience is businesses. So a lot of our revenue comes from being contracted by other businesses to program their space with live music. And so we're able to provide that services to different corporations, whether that's a company coming in, to, for a conference and they need live music for a conference. They'll, book us to be able to curate that conference. And so, I would say musicians, community, and businesses are kind of our three target markets, I guess.
Nice. What services or products do you offer to serve the community, and how do they benefit from the services you offer them? I think you kind of answered some of this, but if you had anything else that you wanted to add.
So I'll just run through kind of all the things that we do. So the first thing that we offer to our target areas is our live music showcases. So those provide musicians with the opportunity to perform, get paid to perform, exposure to new audiences. It gives audiences the opportunity to connect with new live music in the city. Maybe they, stumble upon an artist that they've never heard of before. And so now, they're connected to that artist. They have the opportunity to buy merch from that artist or, whatever, or, stream their music. And then it also serves the business community because oftentimes, those live public showcases are in partnership with the corporation. So we have a good relationship with, I'll say, like the Detroit Riverfront Conservancy that programs all the things along the Detroit River. So our summer series in this space called the DeQuinder Cut was really, that's their space that they own and operate, and they pay us to curate that space. every year. And so that's kind of our first big chunk of what we do. We also offer professional development opportunities. So we'll do things like an artist talk where we'll have, a veteran musician or artist come in and they talk about their life story and the lessons that they've learned from the industry and kind of impart that into younger emerging artists. We have artist panel discussions where we may have panelists talk about everything from music business law to, and that's things like copyright and, all of the royalties that are a part of the music industry, which can all be very confusing. So we try to break things down like that. We also may have discussions on, I don't know, how to get your music put up on streaming platforms and things like that. So we try to touch on like different topics with those workshops. And so those are kind of like our three main buckets that we're working on now. But in the past, we've done artist listening sessions where we give artists who may be working on a new project the opportunity to share their work with the community of, with the small community of musicians, and those musicians get to critique and figure out how to make this song better, how to make this project better and things like that. So we try to do a lot of different things to keep musicians engaged, but also keep community and businesses engaged too.
What are key features of your services that make Decipher appealing, and how do musicians and supporters get involved with Decipher?
I would say a few key things that make us more appealing is that we're really intentional about being inclusive to all people. That's something that, we kind of put out there at the forefront. So yeah, we're really intentional about being inclusive, but we're also really intentional about doing right by the musicians. So, I would say out of all of the organizations in the city, we're probably up there with the organizations who probably pay musicians probably the most for their performances or for their work. And so we really try to do right by the artists and pay artists what they're worth, and what if we're booking the artists and if they ask for a certain dollar amount, we try to meet that dollar amount. So yeah, so we really, I'll say that's what makes us unique. And then also the fact that all of our programming is free. It's just, people like free things.
Yeah.
Yeah,
for sure.
Yeah, so all of we're fortunate enough where we're able to offer all of our programming for free. And then how people can get involved. So musicians get involved through hitting us up through our website, joining our mailing list, whether, if they're coming to an event and they meet me or somebody else from our team, they can get involved that way. And, folks who aren't musicians but still want to support, they can always, we're pretty active on social and keep our event calendar update, so they can always, come out, support one of the events. They can always donate. So yeah, that's how people can get involved.
Nice. And then you mentioned how artists can kind of look you up on the website, and then different ways to get involved. How would you say you keep them from coming back? Like what do you think makes them continue to want to utilize Decipher?
Yeah, so I think artists, they keep coming back because we provide value to them. So where, they're getting paid to, perform. And usually, especially in music, if, you do a great job performing at one show, you're more than likely going to get a call back for something else. And so now you're tapped into an organization who's always activating spaces with live music. And so people are always hitting us up saying hey, I need a full band for this event, or I need an acoustic singer-songwriter for this event. And we're always referring artists out to opportunities. And so, once you get in with us, you stay in that network, and we're always trying to just plug people that are in the network into opportunities. So I think that's what keeps people coming back. And then just the level of professionalism, we Um, we treat every we want every artist to feel special. So, we're not working with like artists that are like Drake status and popularity, but we want to treat them like they're Drake. So we want to make sure that, that they're taken care of. They have, make sure they have simple things. It's like you'll be surprised at how many times a musician may have performed somewhere and they don't even have water, bottled water for the artist. Like it's a no brainer. And so just simple things like that, making sure our artists have water, making sure that after they're done that the artists we're not you don't have to wait 2 or 3 weeks to receive payment from us. We pay you immediately after the show. We're just trying to, go above and beyond of, showing artists respect and care and that, we're looking out for them. And so yeah, I think that's what keeps folks from coming back. And then the general public is just our lineup is always great. We do a great job, curating like with our audience in mind. So we always have a diverse lineup of everything from hip hop to jazz to experimental music. So it's something for everybody, and it's all high quality uh music. It's I think people like oftentimes like nonprofits and this is something that we even pride ourselves on as a nonprofit. Like nonprofits get the rep. It's like, oh, it's not about making money, and like that's true. It's like a cause behind it, and it's socially driven. But we don't want to be a nonprofit that's like, oh, if we don't get this grant this year, we're not going to be able to operate. So we're always figuring out like how can we make money and and make a profit where we're not like constantly having to bootstrap everything. And so, we're a nonprofit at heart, but we definitely have a hustler, entrepreneurial, get the bag mentality.
For sure, for
Yeah.
sure.
Yeah.
I like that.
Yeah. What are your ideas about expanding the artists and support you reach?
Yeah, so the way that we're trying to expand is a couple of ways. So in the immediate future, one of the things that we're looking at is opening up the Cipher Studios, which would be a co-working space specifically for musicians. So we've been like working to like identify the right space to be able to build that out. But in essence, it'll just be a hub for musicians, rehearsal space, recording space, meeting space, a space where artists can be able to like have their merch put up. So kind of like a retail space for artists, local artists to be able to sell their merch on an ongoing basis. And so that's kind of our kind of near future, kind of in the crosshair site that we're looking at now. We also want to expand into artist advocacy. So we want to eventually develop a statewide coalition where people can properly advocate for artists. So whether that's we want every venue in the city or in the state, you have to pay artists at least this baseline amount if they're performing in your bar or a restaurant or venue. Want something as simple as like in Austin, I'll give Austin, Texas a shout out. So they have in front of their venues, they have designated parking for musicians to be able to load in and load out right in front of the venue. In Detroit, there's been so many instances where a band would be parked in front of a venue, right, to like load out their gear and stuff, and they would get a parking ticket because they didn't put their meter ran out or whatever for whatever reason. And it's like I'm not even parking here permanently. I'm just parking just to load out for 20 minutes, right? And so advocating, for things like that is something that we see ourselves doing. And then, something else that we've been toying around with the idea. I don't know if it's something that we'll pursue, but it could be a very real possibility. Because right now we are a nonprofit and do just, our programming and things like that. But a few folks it's like, hey, you guys need to start a record label. And so that's something that we're definitely considering if we wanted to go that route. and kind of make that an offshoot of our nonprofit, what would that look like?
How do you keep track of their feedback? And if you do, how do you implement their responses into the business?
Yeah, so we keep our we get feedback through, and really I attribute this to our director of artist relations and programming, Sophia E, who's one of the artists I listed. So she is really our eyes and ears that's directly interfacing with the musicians and artists that we work with. So she is like, if she's not only helping curate our programming, really like spearheading that curation process of emailing logistics and all of that, and corralling the artists, making sure that they're taken care of, but it's the follow-up after that. So communicating with them, how did the show go, what could we have done better, and so she takes and kind of like aggregates that feedback in her way, and then relates that back to the rest of our team, and then we just take notes from that and try to build out our program better. So that's where artist hospitality comes, making sure our artists have water, making sure that their needs are communicated ahead of time to the guy who's running sound, right? So everything is set up and ready to go for them. And so yeah, we just really have conversations with the artists, having conversations with the folks who attend our events, and kind of going from there and implementing whenever we can.
What are the key activities or things that have to be done to maintain and like run Cipher successfully?
Yes.
The big question.
Yeah, so the key things that have to be done, I would say, to maintain is one, is staying in constant contact with our team, and really at the end of the year and the beginning of the year, we go into like strategic planning mode. So it's kind of having a framework of how we want to operate the next year. So what are the things that we want to do? How many live music showcases do we want to do? How many workshops do we want to do? What are the topics we want to cover? Things like that. And so we kind of, and so we're going into that phase now. So you're catching me like in that mode, like the running of the actual, like the business behind the business. And so really like starting off with building the framework. And so kind of just a dream vision for the year. And then from there, we identify, okay, well, let's see, where are we with our budget? How much did we spend this current year? How much do we have left over to carry us over to the next year? Who are the funders that we want to target this year? What are the current grants that we need to be applying for? Constantly updating our sponsorship deck. So we can have the most up-to-date information when we make cold calls or send cold emails to different businesses to sponsor some of our events and programs. And so really, kind of that's like the first start. And then after we kind of get the programming, we know that we have the funding to be able to execute that programming. Then Sophia, our director of artist relations, she starts reaching out to artists to be able to plug them in to those live showcases. We'll start identifying panelists for our workshops, or kind of who are the veteran musicians that we want to bring in for some of those artist talks. And we just kind of started working together as a team to kind of like fill in those gaps and plug in, kind of build out the programming. And yeah, that's really how we make it work. So it is a process, but it runs smoothly throughout the year because we always start at least like 4 to 6 months in advance. So like we're already thinking about what is summer 2023 gonna look like for us.
Yeah. Kind of going off of that, you mentioned like the budget and costs. What are like the main costs you would say?
The main cost is definitely our programming. So every artist that we work with, we pay our sound guy, we pay a videographer, and photographer to come out and be able to document our events and things like that. So the bulk of our budget is directly to our programming. And then I would say the other portion of our budget, and I would say 70% of our budget goes directly into programming. I'll say the other 15% is our like our staff. So making sure this the team, and it's a team of 3 of us right now. So we give ourselves like just a small monthly stipend to do this work. None of us are doing this work full time. We all have other ventures, that we're involved in. So, it's not like the Cipher is our bread and butter. So we're not pressed where it's like, I need a full-time salary to do Decipher work. And so thankfully, none of us are pressed in that way, where we're solely relying on Decipher. So we're able to, we're just passionate about the work. And so the work gets done, but we do give ourselves a stipend for the time spent working on Decipher projects. And then I would say the remainder of that is really just overhead. So paying for, so our website stays online, paying for any, materials that we need. For instance, like we every summer for the bulk of our live music showcases, we want to make sure we have merch on hand. So we may need to, get a couple hundred t-shirts pressed up for the summer. We have, Google Drive and G Suite. So, we make sure that, we have the funds to pay for that account. So just like those basic, very basic general overhead, it's nothing too crazy, really just our G Suite services, our web hosting, and then, any money that we need for, like, I would say, like marketing materials. So like that's whether that's social media ads or, merch that we use, to kind of continue to promote our brand. And that's the remaining of the funding really goes to that.
Yeah. What about like funding and revenue, like main sources for that?
Yep. So our main sources are through grants as well as earned income. So through providing services to businesses. So like, again, like businesses may hit us up to program their conference or their space with live music. And so that's really been our bread and butter. I would say grants, and I can actually, because I'm in the middle of doing some budget updates. So I'm actually gonna let me actually look at my Google Drive real quick, and I can tell you exactly. You guys are about to get some real time
Ooh.
information here. All right, so it's actually kind of 50-50, but 58% right now of our earned income, of our revenue, is grants. And then the rest of that is earned income. So that's from, companies, contracting our services for whatever is needed.
Yeah, that's really awesome.
And then the other, and then the other, I would say the remaining like 2 to 3% is folks donating. So through the website, through, buying some merch from us, things like that.
Mhm.
Okay. Thank you for the real time information.
Yep, real time update.
Is that shifting then, since you're working on that now? Was it something different before?
Yeah, it is. It's definitely shifting. So this was our biggest year. And again, we're a small nonprofit. We literally just got our 501c3 status this year. And so in the past, our budget was a lot smaller. So we in the past operated on a budget of 30K to 50K, which was like just enough to really cover our summer programming. So our summer concert series was the bulk of that. And then we would do like a few of our like master classes or like artist talks or artist workshops, like around that with whatever we had left. This year, we've doubled our revenue. So our budget was a little over 100K this year. 60K was in grants, and then 40K of that roughly was earned income. So through companies paying us to do stuff for them. And so this was our biggest year as far as earned income. That was just like wide open. This was also our biggest year for the most grant money that we took on. So this year was a really awesome year because we was able to just ramp up and pretty much do everything that we wanted to do this year. And sometimes that that doesn't happen, where it's like, okay, we want to do all this thing, but we only have enough funding for this this portion of programming. So this year we was able to pay ourselves a really nice stipend, do all of the programming that we wanted to do, and not be like bootstrapping or like penny pinching and stuff. We knew, and we met our budget, and so that was really exciting. And then it also just freed us up to be able to think more about, okay, this worked well this year. What are some of the things that we can replicate as far as funding? And so, this year we had a great year financially, but we started late in the game. So we actually started late, our fundraising efforts and like reaching out. We started later than what we were supposed to. And so this year we're like, man, if we was able to do all of that at the kind of last minute resources pulling, think about how much more we could do if we start early. So now we're starting this, like right now, we're in the thick of like fundraising and things like that for 2023. So yeah, we're really excited.
Wow. Congrats on the growth. That's really
thank you.
Thank you. The insight gained also for like what you can do starting now. That's awesome. Yep. So do you have key partners that you work with like consistently, or key like suppliers of any sort?
Absolutely. The first three that come to mind, and they've really been really from the early on stages. So Detroit Riverfront Conservancy, they were our first client. So they, this is 2023 will be year 6 of us working with them for our summer concert series on the Quindercut Greenway. So they were our first contract that we received to be able to program space with live music. And so with them, we were able to really like learn really fast about what needed to be, what went right and what could have been done better for that. So they've been a great partner and really been the bulk of like us learning and growing as an organization. Then we have Music Town, which is a great venue downtown, and they really opened their doors up to us to be able to do a lot of our programming, especially like pre-pandemic when a lot of programming was like indoors. And so we would do early on, we would do like jam sessions, and we would literally like pack a room that may have had like 75 different musicians in different genres, and we'll do a big jam session, and people would just hop on and off the instruments, and people freestyling and people singing and just doing kind of improvisational stuff. And it was just a good time to come together as a music community, network, interact with, like fellow musicians. And so our community was kind of built through those jam sessions that we had, and our community kind of grew out of that. And then also like all of our professional development, like our workshops and our artist talks are held at Music Town. And that's a venue they partner with us, and they're a literal partner. So we don't pay to be in their space, and that's kind of like our home away from home. And so yeah, they're a great partner. And then Detroit City Distillery, which is a venue. It's a bar and distillery based in Eastern Market here in Detroit, and they was one of the early supporters that jumped on. Was like, hey, we love what you guys are doing. We want you guys to program space at our bar throughout the summer, and that evolved. This year was our third year doing that with them. And we just ended that series for the summer with a huge block party festival, and it literally probably had like 2,000 people, like outside, like within this one block strip corridor in Eastern Market, and we had live bands and the DJ and stuff, and we just threw a big end of the summer party, and it was a banger. And we did that in partnership with Detroit City Distillery, and that was really cool. And so yeah, we have some really cool community partners, and we have some great folks who sits on our board of advisors too that really help us out.
Yeah, I was gonna say that says a lot if they're like coming back each year, like maintaining the partnership. That's really awesome.
Yeah, absolutely.
The jam session sounds so fun. That's really
yeah, cool. We're hoping to be able to bring those back in a real ways. This year we toyed around with it over the past few years throughout the pandemic, and they were all like outside. But jam sessions are so tricky because you got people sharing microphones and sharing instruments. So, it goes with COVID cooties, when people get cooties or whatever. So we're hoping now that, things seem to be kind of plateauing a little bit more. People are more, comfortable being around folks, indoors. So we're hoping to bring those back in 2023.
Yeah. So speaking of COVID, I guess, would you say that was like a huge challenge for you guys, or were there any other challenges that are worth mentioning?
COVID was a challenge for us because I would say it was hard, especially because we did programming summer 2020 because it was all outdoors, and that's when kind of at the peak of the pandemic, once the summer hit, they was like, oh, it's kind of safe to be outside, so you should be good, just everybody masked up. So we were able to keep a lot of our summer programming because all of that was outdoors anyway. But with that, the challenge specifically that summer of 2020, and even a little bit of summer 2021, it was hard to get artists to agree to perform because artists were still afraid of like performing live, and some had went for months of not performing, and so just even getting used to being out of the house is something that was a challenge. And then just how do we keep audience members safe? So we went ham on Amazon and bought a bunch of surgical masks and things like that to keep for audience members to be able to, if they forgot a mask or something happened, they were able to, the audience as well as the artists would have access to that. We made sure at every vendor station that hand sanitizer was available and things like that. So just making sure that, we had those safety protocols and measure. I remember that summer we also had like social distancing, like signage around or whatever, even like the little decals that people will put on like floors and stuff. So we had that on the sidewalk to make sure people, was maintaining their distance. So just trying the best that we could to kind of navigate those safety measures. I would say that was the biggest challenge. And then just really figuring out what was gonna happen with the future of music, and like, are shows ever gonna come back, or are we gonna have to like just have artists start doing concerts from their house, which is, I did a few Zoom performances myself over the pandemic, and it's just not the same. Like it's just not the same as performing live and all of that stuff. So, we didn't know if that was going to be the new normal. So it was definitely a scary time.
Yeah, I was going to ask if you guys like pivoted to virtual at any point, or thought maybe you would have to, like indefinitely?
Yeah, so we did virtual, I would say we did virtual the first summer. We did a lot of our workshops and artist talks virtually. And then 2021 we did some more programming virtual. So yeah, a lot of our like artist talks and our workshops were either like pre-recorded or virtual. This year, 2022 is the first year kind of since the pandemic where we did everything kind of how we normally did them before the pandemic. It was just with very much like say a prayer that this goes well, that everyone remains safe. Checking in with artists. There was a few times, this year where we had to reschedule an artist because, it's like, hey, my drummer got COVID, so we can't perform. And, booking an artist last minute to fill a particular time slot. So yeah, we have to do different things, but it's, it's the new normal now. So you just roll with it.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
What about in terms of like competitors, or do you like who do you or if
competitors
or like just factors that make it challenging to operate?
So it's like I would say we don't have any direct competitors. I'll say the closest thing to maybe a direct competitor is like when it comes to the grant space and other nonprofits who are like trying to get grants from some of those same organizations, especially with us being an arts and culture driven organization, specifically music driven organization. Sometimes, a funder, they may say, well, that's, we're mainly focused on youth development, right? Or we're focused on this particular thing. So arts and culture with our kind of mission being a little more broader than like a specific social justice issue or whatever. So that is probably, I would say, the biggest challenge is just when it comes to like that applying for grants and just getting the funder to see like the significance of why arts and culture is relevant to community development and things like that. But really outside of that, it's not really an organization that's really doing what we're doing right now in the city. There's an organization on the west side of the state. Shout out to them. They're called Michigan Music Alliance. They're really cool. And so they're doing similar work, but their work is mainly focused on kind of the west side of the state, so like Grand Rapids area. And so have been, reaching out to them, figuring out like, okay, we're mainly based in the Detroit area, southeastern Michigan. I would say it's the farthest out that we have traveled as an organization is like Ann Arbor and Ypsi area. So we've done some programming out there, but really, we're east side, they're kind of the west side of the state. So we're like, hey, let's figure out a way to collaborate and work together.
Yeah.
So even organizations like that, we're always trying to like collaborate with people. So it's not really a competitive thing.
Yeah, that's really nice in my opinion. That's like more ideal.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a better outcome, I feel like, than having a competitor, especially because you're a nonprofit. So I feel like that's like a big difference. It's nice too. It's more like community based.
Yeah, and we're all about community, and so we're always, trying to collaborate. I'll give you guys a quick scenario. So when we first started, there was I would say this is probably the biggest kind of like competitive thing that we had to overcome. So when we first started, our co-founder Wayne, he's the one who came up with the name Cipher. And Cipher, like the D, obviously like Detroit, and then Cipher in music is kind of a term of like, and like especially in hip hop, like with artists getting together and like freestyling and stuff, right? And so he was like, that's kind of what we do as artists. We get people together and we bounce ideas and energy and all of that stuff. So it's kind of like a cipher. We're Detroit, so decipher, let's put it together. And then decipher, the generic term is like to decode something. And so we help musicians try to navigate the music industry, so decode the music industry. So it's kind of like a double entendre of a name. So I was like, yeah, that sounds dope. That'll be our name. At the same time, there was an exhibit at the DIA, which is the big art museum here, and they had a photo exhibit called Deciphered, and it was completely spelled differently, but it was highlighting. But the photo exhibit was highlighting local Detroit-based musicians, right? And so when we first launched our summer series, people was like, this organization is jacking the photo exhibit and we need to boycott them this summer series and their culture vultures. It was crazy. And so we had to put out like a statement of like, no, we're not a photo exhibit. We're a nonprofit doing community programming. So it's totally different, totally different like things that we're doing. And then the name was spelled differently. So like that was, you know, something that we was like, this is stupid that we even have to like put out a statement. And so I would say that was that was probably like the biggest competition problem that we had to solve. And it literally like within a couple of months, like people didn't even care anymore. It was like, whatever.
Wow, I can't believe that.
And then, now the
Just
photo exhibit, the photo exhibit is long gone and we're working on our 6th year of doing programming in the city and people love us. So it was funny.
Maybe it got you more like attention too, because then there's
think
like
it
this
did.
little debate. It got you more of a, oh, what's if this is decipher, what's this decipher, you know?
Yep. Yeah, I think it did. I think it helped us in the long run.
It's funny looking back, but in the moment I would be like pretty stressed out.
Yeah, we were stressed, and it was crazy. It was like some of the artists in the photo exhibit that were kind of like pissed about it. We're like artists that like we knew personally. I'm like, why are you going on social media ranting? Like you could have sent me a text or called me directly. So I was like, our team was like calling artists like, yo, like, why are you blasting us out on Facebook and Twitter? Like, you know who we are. Like, you're being crazy. Like, chill out. So yeah, it was very interesting navigating that for sure.
So I guess like on a positive note, I know you talked about some of the goals and like expanding a little bit, but are there opportunities right now that you guys are looking at or like anything?
So right now we're just trying to identify a space for Decipher Studio, so our co-working hub, and you know, figuring out the right space, and then also just figuring out how kind of that business model and kind of like refining that and things like that, and you know, starting to fundraise and things like that specifically for that one project. And that's going to be a heavy lift. And so, you know, we're taking our time with it. Like our programming is working for us. That's a well-oiled machine right now. And so we're taking our time building out and figuring out this Decipher Studios, because that's like when you're responsible for actual physical space and building, it comes with its own set of logistics and learning curves. So yeah, we're taking our time with that. But that'll be the next thing that we kind of do. Yeah.
So I don't know if I just didn't see this anywhere, but do you guys not have any type of like permanent space right now? Is it always?
Nope, we don't. We don't have a permanent space right now. So right now we work out of co-working spaces. So if we need to like meet and you know, things like that, we have a co-working space like that, you know, all of our mail goes to that co-working space as well. And so yeah, that's where we operate out of, I would say, if you want to call it an operation. We just literally whenever we meet there, whenever we need to meet, in our mail goes there. But yeah, we're pretty much nomads. So we, you know, wherever the programming, wherever we're needed to program with live music, that's where we're at. Music Town, I would say, would be the closest thing to kind of like a hub for us right now. We do a lot of our professional development programming there. God bless you, Kobe.
Bless you.
No.
Yeah, well, I can see how, I mean, that would be convenient to have a space, but it seems like you're making it work pretty well.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Yeah, anything you
Um,
wanted to add to toward like final statements for the company and your I guess like
I think you guys have you all have some really solid questions. Yeah, I was just add, that we're all about we're all about empowering our artists. We're all about like inclusive community building. We're all about we're one of the things that we do try to do intentionally is we do try to support BIPOC artists. That's something that's important to us, and so making sure that the artists that we work with are reflective of the community that we serve, and so that's something that's we definitely try to be intentional of doing as well.
Mommy.
Absolutely.
nice. Well, thank you again so much for your time.
Thank you.
And rescheduling and really going through each question. We really appreciate your thoroughness. Thank you again. And we just went on a trip to Detroit, a field trip, and we got to see a lot of local communities and businesses really getting together. So it's always just nice to see other thriving businesses and how everything kind of works, the ins and outs. So thank you again for everything. It was great learning so much more about Cipher.
Oh, absolutely. And thank you all for taking the time. And yeah, go blue. I live in a Spartan household and I'm the only Wolverine fan here. So I'll always get to chat with you of them folks for sure.
Yeah, of course. Well, we probably will email you. I'm sure things will come up, but
Yeah, feel
it was
free.
very nice chatting with you today.
Absolutely. All right. You all take care.
Talk soon. You
Thanks.
too.
And you too.
Have a good one.
By any means
All right.